Greetings, neurotics and their parents. Today's topic is obsessive compulsive disorder. For those who are not quite familiar with this disorder, I will remind you. Obsessive compulsion is that obsessive thought. Compulsion is that compulsive action. Rechecking doors and locks, electrical appliances, endless hand washing, and so on and so forth. Also obsessive thoughts of various frightening nature. And here's a little etiology of this disorder, where all these cause and effect relationships stem from. Well, as a rule, very contradictory, very controversial opinions, disagreements on this topic. All the same, it is customary to distinguish three such directions, three factors. These are biological, social, and psychological. The biological one includes disruption of neurotransmitters, serotonin, norepinephrine, as well as brain function, some diseases. Also, autonomic nervous activity has something to do with it. Disturbance in the work of this system can lead to this disorder. Then the social factor. Well, let us suppose that the child was brought up in a puritanical family, such a religious family, with excessive morals, in some rigid framework. This disorder could also form. And then there is the psychological factor. That is, there are several ways of looking at the dart in general, several theories, several approaches. Psychoanalytic according to Freud, according to Pavlov, also constitutional. What accentuation and what kind of character the person has. Some kind of circumstances that were psychotraumatic. That the child had some kind of psychological trauma, and this subsequently provoked this disorder. And this is the time period in which this disorder is formed, as a rule, is triggered. From 10 to 30 years of age, somewhere in this interval the disorder somehow manifests itself. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what kind of people suffer from obsessive-compulsive disorder. People who are very intellectually advanced. People who avoid conflict. They want everything to be fine. Nobody quarrels. Nobody fights. It's peaceful. Such people who avoid conflicts, they suppress their aggression. Pay attention, if you've watched people with OCD, they are very benevolent people. They are afraid of changes. They take everything close to their heart. They are very suspicious. That is, for a patient with obsessive-compulsive disorder, for him to move to another city or to change his job is like death. Everything has to have its own regular schedule, its own ritual, its own predictability. It has to be predictable. Okay, and let's talk a little bit about a specific case. Well, there are many different variations. Let's take the most common case. I'll use it to tell you how it's formed. Here, for example, hand washing. Since personally I am very close to this psychoanalytic approach to consideration in general and to the view of neurosis, I will explain how it is all formed. So, we have our animal, our unconscious, where these urges, incentive of various kinds of an animal nature live. I want, this kind of want lives there. And we have a superego, a super me that controls. It's not good to do that. That kind of parental control. That's not how good boys behave. You can't have all the women around there. You can't fight or bite. You have to behave right. And this is the right thing to do. And thus there is a struggle of motives. I want and I have to. There is such a notion the neurotics had among psychologists. The struggle of motives between want and need. So there is such a struggle. And what do you get as a result? Neurosis, you get this way. And you get the formation of neurosis. What? The level of anxiety increases. Here is the level of anxiety increases. And now let's see how this level of anxiety leads a person to obsessive-compulsive disorder. The level of anxiety increases. There is nothing more frightening to a person than the unknown. What is anxiety? It is uncertainty. It is as if you are afraid of something, but you do not know what, as if something can happen. And so for a long time a person cannot be in it. And just why all this was happening? He was repressing aggression. The repressed aggression comes out in anxiety. And then in order to calm down, the psyche helps and prompts him. She says, well, let's be afraid of germs. That's it, thank God. I'll be afraid of germs, here are my germs, and now I know what I'm afraid of. If before I didn't know what I was afraid of and this anxiety tormented me, now I finally know. The psyche somehow saves him. That is, he feels the situation more in control. I'm afraid of my germs. There they are. That's it. Now I'm in control of it, it's okay. I can already wash my hands and there will be no germs. This situation becomes clearer to him. It's clear. Everything has settled into place in his head. Everything became structured, just the way he wanted it. Next, what does he do? He goes to wash his hands somehow more thoroughly, let's say. At this point he falls into the OCD trap. Bam, that's it. That is, he did some kind of erroneous action, sort of to save himself. And he fell into this trap. What happened to him? His anxiety level went down, he felt good. There was this cognitive behavioral coupling between what he did and what he thought. He felt good. All the germs were gone, and there was no problem at all. He got his breath back, but not for long. The situation here is very similar to that of an addict. An addict can't take a small dose anymore. He needs more and more and more and more and more to get high. It's the same with people with OCD. It needs more and more and more and more and more and more attention to the germs in order to settle down, because already the former procedure does not calm him down. Next he starts washing his hands with a certain soap, some kind of antibacterial soap. Then he washes them with a brush. Then he spends 10 minutes, 15-20 minutes, scalds them with boiling water, washes them up to his elbow, washes them up to his shoulder, these hands. Then he starts to open everything with tissues, with gloves, and deliberately avoids shaking hands. He already wears his hands like this. He doesn't have skin on his hands anymore. Remember the movie The Aviator? Remember, it's a very famous movie, and there are a lot of movies like that. I'm sure you've seen it. Here he is wearing these pens. What do you get? Where is the border here? The norm of pathology. We all have our own ritual. We are all afraid of the black cat, and if we come home late, we have to show our tongues, and so on, to spit, God forbid. What is that? Ritualism. But in people with OCD it takes on such a pathological form. His life begins to revolve around the symptom. That's it. He can't stand it and he already goes to specialists. That's it. His life is already subordinated to this symptom. So, what happens? What does he do? Let's look at this mechanism here. What does he get involved in these hands for? Why does his psyche help him this way? And it helps him not to look into his pain, into his unresolved question, into his neurotic situation, which he has been living in for all these long years, that he has never resolved it. It is so painful for him to look deep into himself, into his intrapersonal conflict, into his deepest problem, let's say some, God forbid, childhood trauma, an unresolved conflict with his father, his mother, something else. What he unconsciously chooses is to look at these knobs or at this switch. All of his attention is involved in this process, in the ritual. All attention is involved in the process, not in the trouble that lives in his belly, not into the trouble, because to sink into this sadness, this inner grief, this anxiety, this longing, this pain, it is so unbearable for him, so difficult, that his psyche saves him. She tells him, here, turn off the lights, take care of something you've turned off there, switched it, the gas stove. That's what you do. Let your concern be here, but just not here, because here, you can't take it. That's the situation. Here I explain to you how obsessive compulsive disorder is formed. This is roughly how it is formed. This is a particular case here. Let's look further at what psychotherapy offers. First of all, medication, tranquilizers, and antidepressants. That's understandable. And nowhere, of course, without real psychotherapy. In the first place today is cognitive behavioral psychotherapy. In general, I believe that no adequate work of a psychologist with a client can do without the cognitive behavioral approach. Because a client needs to see the irrationality of his beliefs, the irrationality of his distorted thinking. He must see where he is clearly wrong, also change some of his actions. Without cognitive behavioral therapy, you can't go anywhere at all. But at the same time, I would like to point out that this is not a deep method. There is a deeper psychoanalytic work. This is psychocatalysis, where the patient is working directly with his underlying psychological trauma. They heal it, they work with it. In this way, it's as if he grows up, rebuilds, grows up. The intrapersonal conflict is resolved there. Because cognitive behavioral therapy, what is it going to offer me to do with my hands? It's going to offer me an approach, the most common one, increasing the stimulus of the stimulus. That is, I will dip my hands in the toilet bowl, in the blood, in some other nasty stuff. In this way, the smallest irritants will no longer embarrass me in any way. Normal germs, they are no longer embarrassing. Thus the symptom goes away, it disappears. Yes, really, I stop washing these hands, and quickly. But does my intrapersonal conflict go away? Does my trouble, my sadness, my longing go away? Does it go away? No, it doesn't go away. And in this way I find another symptom. It comes out in me into something else. That's it. So here I am, of course, in favor of a comprehensive approach in this direction. I'm going to be making a lot of videos about obsessive compulsive disorder because it's a very important topic, it's not well researched, and I want to say a lot about it. Let's talk a little bit about the prevention of this disorder. In general, as far as all neuroses are concerned, I would like to point out why the neuroticization of the population is increasing. Every year it becomes higher and higher. The figures are simply colossal. We never had anything like this before, to such an extent. Why? Because in addition to the stress factors of traffic jams, work, and so on, we have a very pampered lifestyle. Human psychophysics is not designed for such comfort, such an amount of immobility. That is, man stopped walking, we move very little. Then came washing machines, dishwashers, vacuum cleaners, various televisions and computers. We are overloaded psychologically and not physically. If a person lived in the village, if a woman lived in the countryside, I would get up at 5 a.m. I would have to milk a cow, then weed some beds, apply water, boil water, wash laundry. It's all hands on deck. I already have 15 kids there, all needing to wash their butts. I have to chop wood, heat the hut. What kind of neurosis could I have? What insomnia? What kind of depression? Nothing. If I don't take into account the organic genesis, the origin of some severe form of disease, I don't take that. I'm taking neuroticization. That's it. That's why we've all been swallowed up by the city, by comfort. Everybody likes hot water, cozy cows at home, microwaves. Everybody's involved in that computer, TV. It's hard to deny yourself that. And yet, as far as prevention is concerned, I urge you less surrogates and less chemicals and more real something, more something natural. That is, if you take your child for a walk in the park, take him for a walk in the park. And do not look at your gadgets, toys, phones, and so on. Enjoy the present. And also, if there is a choice, let's say, to walk, you choose to walk. Exercise yourself more physically. As far as being neurotic, I see a direct correlation here. So that's it for today. Have a good day. Goodbye.